Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Conscious Eating Evolution. I'm Karina, Conscious Eating Catalyst and Soul Relationship Guide, and have created this self-empowering series to give you a more holistic overview around the transformative power of food so you feel more enabled and empowered to make healthier and more mindful choices for yourself and this planet. And today we are going to talk about planetary healing and world peace and how food really relates to that with Dr. Will Tuttle. He's a visionary educator and author of many books, such as the acclaimed bestseller, The World Peace Diet, which was published in 16 languages. He is a recipient of the Courage of Conscience Award and the Empty Cages Prize, a vegan since 1980, and he's still alive and looking fabulous. And he's a frequent radio, television, and online presenter and has created several wellness and advocacy training programs. He was featured in Cowspiracy and other documentary films. He is the co-founder of the Worldwide Prayer Circle for Animals, a former Zen monk with a Ph.D. from USC Berkeley. Dr. Tuttle is also a noted composer and pianist and lectures and concertizes extensively throughout the world, promoting peace and cultural healing. That sounds so amazing, and I'm incredibly honored and happy to have you here today. A warm welcome from my side.
Thank you, Karina. It's great to be with you. I'm glad you're doing this summit. It sounds fantastic, and thank you, everyone, for listening and for caring.
Yeah. So first and foremost, let us find out a little bit more about you. What brought you into the place where you're at right now, and then maybe give us an introduction or insight about your work and what your books and the message behind all your work and the books that you have written really is about.
Right. Okay. Yeah, briefly, I think I'm very similar to most people in the sense that I was raised in a family eating the usual meals, lots of meat, dairy products, and eggs, and I didn't really question it. It was back in the 1950s. This was in Concord, Massachusetts. And I remember when I was about 7, I asked my mother about the food. I said, are we eating what everybody eats? Is this typical human food? And she said, yeah, this is pretty much what everybody eats. And then she came back a little later and she said, I'm sorry, that's not completely correct. There are vegetarians. And I'd never heard that word in my life. And so I was really curious what these vegetarians are. And she said, don't worry, you're never going to meet one. And she said, I'm a lot older than you. I've never met one. I don't know where they get their protein. And, so I had this image of these poor vegetarians that must be dragging themselves through the dirt, not getting enough protein, just weak and sickly and so forth. So I was just glad I wasn't a vegetarian. And I went through my life as a young person growing up, eating a lot, as I said, a lot of meat, dairy products, and eggs. And even in the summers would go up to Vermont and work on a farm where I learned to kill chickens myself. And every summer we would kill a cow, dairy cow, because when they get to be about 5 years old, they're worn out. Even though cows would naturally live 25 years, by the time they're 5 years old, we would put a gun to their heads and just kill them. So I participated in all that and saw the bloodiness of it and the terrible violence. But I never questioned that it was not the right thing to do, because everyone in my world, my parents, my teachers, my doctor, all friends and neighbors and relatives, everyone ate meat and dairy products. We all knew you had to do it. God gave us these animals to eat. They don't have a soul. If you don't eat them, you're going to die within 24 hours of a protein deficiency, or you're going to collapse because of a calcium deficiency. So this is just how it is. And so that's the main point, really, in World Peace Diet. One of them is that all of us are products of our communities. The only reason we eat animal foods is because of the communities we're raised in. And it's not something that we do because either we want to harm the environment or we want to harm animals. No. It's just, we're just following orders. We're just basically following orders that were injected into us from the time we're little infants, probably even in the womb, probably. Just, we're learning at a very deep level, this is what we eat. And every species, the most important thing the parents teach the offspring is eat this, don't eat that. So this is something we take very seriously, naturally. It's part of our basic programming. So I think for me, the great benefit and blessing I had was that I was able, after college, to leave home with my brother and take a walk, like a pilgrimage. We decided to just walk all the way to California, we thought. We got about as far as Buffalo, New York, and then we headed south for many months. And we ended up in Tennessee at a community at one point called The Farm. It was the largest hippie commune in the world back in, this was 1975, and they were all vegans, basically. This community, 900 people, they called themselves vegetarians because that word was unknown in 1975, but they didn't eat any meat or dairy products or eggs, and they were all thriving. People were healthy, they were happy, they had about 200 children, they were all totally plant-based from birth, and they were thriving, you know, so I could see that it wasn't necessary to eat animal foods, although I wasn't sure, you know, about dairy, but I could see they were doing fine without eating meat. And so I asked them why, and they gave actually what I thought were two very good reasons. One reason was they said there's a lot of war and conflict in the world, and the main reason is because of food shortages. But every year we grow plenty of food to feed everybody. The problem is we feed most of the food we're growing to animals while people are starving, and that injustice and the suffering of starving people always leads to conflict and war. And so they said we're eating lower on the food chain so there's enough for everyone to eat so we can have peace in the world. And that made an impact on me, and I knew it was true because I'd heard of some of these ideas earlier, but this was the first example of people really doing this. And the other reason, they said, do you know what they asked me, do you know what the animals go through? And they told me a little bit about some of the routine abuse of animals in factory farms and slaughterhouses, and hyper confinement and killing and mutilation of all these poor animals. So it was like my mind was able at that point to open up really to all the suffering, the oceans of suffering that were causing animals. And the beautiful thing, I think, was that I was with a community of 900 people that were all vegans, right? And every day I was eating what they ate, right? I mean, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't go out and have a burger. I mean, we were eating, you know, a lot. Back then it was a lot of soybeans and vegetables. You know, that was kind of the thing, rice and beans. But that was it. I have never eaten meat in my life since that day in 1975 when they told me this. So that was almost 45 years ago. And a few years later, about 5 years later, 1980, I made more the connection between the abuse of cows and hens for dairy products and eggs. And so I just became what we call a vegan back in 1980. So that's almost 40 years ago. And I have to say, besides marrying my wonderful wife, Madeline, I think it was the smartest thing I ever did, was going vegan, because really I found it just has created a foundation for wonderful physical health. I haven't actually been to the medical establishment, you know, to doctors in over 40 years. Wow. And stayed out. I haven't had to go to the drugstore for anything other than Band-Aids. You know, I haven't bought anything at all. You know, and so to just have a basic foundation for health, I think, is a great contribution to our own happiness, to our effectiveness, to the energy that we can live our lives. And it doesn't, you know, it's not going to guarantee that we'll never get sick or anything. But the basic idea, this is well understood now by scientific research, that the more we eat a whole food, organic, especially if it's possible, local, plant-based diet, these are the foods that we're really designed to thrive on and to be healthy. So it's a great foundation for our physical health. And being healthy, I think, is a great gift we give not only to ourselves, but to our loved ones, to the world. The more sick I am, the more animals have to be tested on for drugs and all these other things. It's just hard on everybody. So being healthy is not just selfish. Being healthy is benevolent. It's altruistic. It blesses everyone. It blesses the whole world. So I think that's an important piece of understanding. But also, when we expand, I talk about 4 other dimensions of health, all of which are harmed by animal agriculture and all of which are benefited by moving to a plant-based way of eating. And those are 2 other outer dimensions of health. One is environmental health and the other is cultural health. So the basic idea is that animal agriculture, because it's so inefficient and wasteful, we're cutting down rainforests right now at over 1 acre per second, which is not only destroying habitat for wildlife, we're now in the largest mass extinction of species in 65 million years, driven by animal agriculture, causing these animals to go extinct. And also indigenous peoples are having their forests and habitats, you know, destroyed. But also the oceans are being overfished, the soil is being eroded, water is being depleted, all to grow huge amounts of grain. According to the National Academy of Sciences, 12 times as much land and water and petroleum to feed someone eating a standard Western diet as someone eating a plant-based diet, organic plant-based diet. So if we want to really radically reduce our environmental impact and help the earth, there's no greater gift we can give really to the earth and to future generations than to move to a plant-based way of eating and living. And then the other is the cultural health, which is living in a healthy society. We can't live in a happy, healthy society when people are starving. And it's unnecessary. We live on a beautiful and abundant planet. So these are the main ideas that I've discovered, that we can be healthy physically, we can have a healthy society, we don't have to require people to do work where they're stabbing animals all day or impregnating them on rape racks or stealing babies from their mothers. These poor workers have the highest rates of injury, highest rates of suicide and drug addiction, alcohol abuse. So the whole idea, again, is as we're kind to animals, as we're kind to other human beings, that comes back to us. We feel happier, we feel healthier, we are healthier, we create a healthier society. And then in the World Peace Diet, I talk about the inner dimensions, the two inner dimensions of health. One is psychological health, and the other is spiritual health or ethical health. And spiritual health, I think, is very important, and this is often neglected in our discussion about food. You know, we think about our health, our physical body. I think we have to think about our environment and our culture, but also we have to think about our spiritual orientation, to understand that we have a purpose on this earth. And if we're stealing the purposes of animals all the time, pretty soon we create a whole culture where no one has a purpose. I mean, we're taught basically in our society that our purpose is to consume, right? The more we can buy, the happier we'll be, and that's wrong. We all know that the more we consume, usually the more miserable we are. So spiritual health has to do with connecting with who we are authentically as an expression of consciousness. And then finally, psychological health is being aware of the attitudes that are in our mind. And again, understanding that animal agriculture injects into us not only foods that are harmful to us physically, but attitudes that are harmful to us mentally. The attitude of domination, of exploitation, of reducing beings to objects, the attitude of disconnectedness, of just not looking deeply or feeling deeply, the attitude of desensitization, the attitude of the domination of the sacred feminine dimension of life, the attitude of might makes right, of privilege and elitism. All these attitudes are the driving force behind war and slavery, which we still have, injustice, inequality, and so forth, and the domination of women, which is still a problem in our society. This is animal agriculture. Animal agriculture at its core is about stealing babies from their mothers and dominating female animals. So we're causing this by the millions every day. We're eating it. We're feeding it to our children. So these are the basic ideas. And I came to it, I think, just organically because I was luckily exposed to communities that were more plant-based or more vegan in their orientation, not only the farm in Tennessee, but also a Zen Buddhist monastery I lived in Korea, where they've been practicing veganism for 900 years, about 850 years, since the 1200s. So I realized that veganism is not a new idea, it's an ancient wisdom, and it's just part of our natural heritage. So I think this is the foundation, essentially, of not only health for ourselves, but for our whole world.
So it's really the concept behind it, right? And what you already kind of picked the topic up, the domination of the feminine. Can you give us a more insight on that concept or understanding and how this really relates to our food choices?
Yes, I think it's important to realize that we're all born into a culture that's organized at its core around herding animals. I've coined the word herderism. It's to describe the behavior and the mentality and the orientation of our society, and it's invisible. No one realizes that we're living in a herding culture. We think, no, we're living in a modern, computerized society. We're herding animals by the millions. It's just they're confined and it's invisible. So in a herding culture, there's three things we do to animals. One is we imprison them, right? We enslave them. They're born into captivity, which is terrible. No freedom at all. Second thing we do is we kill them, right? Obviously, we kill them. We always kill. Everyone that's born into animal agriculture is always got a knife to the throat, always. And then whether it's dairy production, egg production, or meat production, it's always the same thing. And then the third thing, which is the heart of the whole thing, is we have to impregnate these animals against their will on what the industry refers to as a rape rack. And so that's for cows, pigs, chickens, turkeys, ducks, geese, sheep, lambs. I mean, all animals are impregnated against their will. And this is violent. This is sexual abuse that goes on by the millions every day. It's the background of our society, and we're causing this. Each one of us, if we're eating animal foods of any kind, any meat, dairy products, or eggs, we're causing that. In wearing wool, silk, and leather also. I mean, all these things, these are all causing sexual abuse of animals. And so I think when we take out our wallets and we pay for it, I mean, that in a way is bad enough. And I did it. You know, we all have been taught to do that. But then we go beyond that, and we not only pay for it, then we turn around and we actually eat it. Right? We actually eat the flesh of these animals, the dairy products that are stolen from them, the eggs that are stolen from them. And so we have to really clearly see what I saw, and what Madeline and I sometimes, we lived in an RV, a rolling home, a house on wheels, a little house, 200 square feet for 17 years. So we traveled all over the United States. We've been in every state many times. We've been everywhere. And sometimes we park our RV near a dairy operation, and I could hear, I've heard it many times late at night, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. The cows are bellowing. Their babies have been stolen. They're crying in anguish. So this terrible, it's the worst thing we can do to a mother is to just impregnate her against her will. And when she, after 9 months of carrying this baby and giving birth, and she wants to nurse the baby, love and nurture the baby. And we never let that happen on any dairy operation, whether it's organic or commercial, whether it's large or small. They always do the same thing. I own you. I own your baby. I'm going to steal your baby. I'm going to kill your baby. They always kill them. And then they impregnate her again on the rape rack and steal her baby again, and then steal the milk and steal her purpose and steal her life and steal everything and steal the babies and kill them. So this is abuse of the feminine. So what it does is it not only harms these poor mothers and their babies terribly and causes them enormous anguish, but it also boomerangs back on us and harms what I refer to in the World Peace Diet as Sophia. Sophia is as many people maybe know, it's a Greek word. It means wisdom, and it's feminine, and it's in a sense the goddess, the inner aspect of wisdom that we all have as human beings. We have an inner wisdom that yearns to love and nurture and protect life. This is the wisdom, especially in women. I think obviously they give birth to babies. This wisdom kicks in, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to help and love and nurture and protect that little baby, which is the foundation for a healthy life, for healthy individuals, for a healthy society. But in animal agriculture, when we started doing this, it was 10,000 years ago in what is today the Eastern Mediterranean region of Iraq. Human beings for the first time started owning wild sheep, and then wild goats, and then about 2,000 years later, wild cows, and owning them and impregnating them against their will and stealing their babies. This is when we started doing it 10,000 years ago. And that was the beginning of a patriarchal society based on the domination of women, because now men look at the female as merely a breeder. She's just here to give me what I want. She's here to give me sons, give me what I want, give me sexual pleasure. And so the cows and sheep and goats are abused sexually, but pretty soon, if you just read the old books, the first old books, that came out, like the ancient Old Testament writings, ancient Greek writings, and Babylonian writings, the women by that point, that's about only 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago, women are bought and sold like cows and sheep, right? They're just owned as property. And this is the foundation because of animal agriculture. So we have to understand, if we want to eat a burger, if we want to eat ice cream, if we want to eat an egg, we are going to have war. We're going to have women being dominated and exploited. We're going to have the environment being destroyed. We're going to have boys also being wounded. They're forced to repress the natural Sophia wisdom they have, the natural kindness and caring, and become hard and tough, and look at girls as objects to be used, look at nature as an object to be used, look at animals as objects to be used, and creating a very, really violent economic capitalistic system where lots of people are being harmed. And so the whole idea is this goes against our natural wisdom, our natural kindness and caring, our natural Sophia wisdom. It's just the food is so powerful as a program. we're not just eating food, we're eating a whole set of attitudes. And they go in very deep. They become the very cells of our body. We're eating the terror and fear and pain and despair of these animals. And it's given to us by very trusting people we trust completely. My mother, my father, the minister at church, the doctors, all these people we trust, because the same thing happened to them, right?
Right.
You can't blame anyone. It just came down through the generations, and everybody's wounded. But now we realize we can't do this anymore.
No.
This generation has to wake up and stop it and not pass it on to our children. That's the key. Yeah.
So it's really about making the connection, because when the connection is there, we actually have the ability to make a different choice than what has been ingrained into us, and we have just running as a program whenever, like, the way we grew up.
Exactly, making the connection, and that's really intelligence. I talk about that in the World Peace Diet, the capacity to make relevant connections. That is actually the definition for intelligence. But what animal agriculture does, every meal is a ritual, because anthropologists understand this, that every society transmits its values from generation to generation through the rituals of that society, and meals are the main ritual in every society. So every meal is actually a ritual, with deep meaning, and it's toxic. I mean, it's teaching me, don't make the connection. This is just bacon. This is just cheese. We don't see, we don't feel the animal and her suffering. We learn with every meal. We're wounded, where our intelligence is reduced. We're taught to stay shallow, not to look deeply, not to feel deeply, not to care deeply, just to follow orders. And there's this underlying mentality of never growing up. We're still eating milk, drinking milk. I mean, like we're just trust authorities and don't question anything and don't make the connection. So what veganism is, essentially, it's just simply nothing to be proud of. It's not being better than anybody. It's just saying, oh, I want to make the connection. I want to come home to my true nature and eat the foods that I'm designed to eat and not cause unnecessary suffering to other beings. And that's the great thing, is that all of us have been given this wonderful gift of a physical body that does not require any animal to suffer, to get all the nutrients that we need to be healthy and to thrive and to celebrate our lives. And I think once we realize that we've all been given that gift, and then we realize also that we've all been wounded in the sense growing up where we've been forced to refuse that gift and say, well, we're going to stab and kill animals anyway and eat them. And we cause terrible suffering to them, and it boomerangs back to us. And we have war, we have terrorism, we have disease, we have conflict, we have injustice. We have a situation now where a lot of scientists are saying we may not, our children may not have their children, right? I mean, our climate, there's so many things that are happening in the world because of animal agriculture and because of the mentality of animal agriculture, of domination and exploitation of nature and each other, that with the technology that we have of nuclear weapons and cutting down rainforests and overfishing the oceans and climate destabilization, all these things, it's really time to question animal agriculture and spread this message. So I'm so glad that you're doing this and that people are becoming more and more interested in understanding this.
Yeah, and what do you think, what actually caused this disconnect that we have experienced over the past years, that it was actually able to be expressed in the way of, not understanding the interconnectedness of all things, not making the connection? What do you think kind of caused it or led to it?
I think really what caused it, essentially, is what I talk about in the World Peace Diet. It's an underlying program of eating animal foods. Like when we started 10,000 years ago, that some people in Iraq started doing this, eating wild sheep and goats, and then gradually the whole thing spread. It spread throughout the Eastern Mediterranean to the Northern Mediterranean to Central Asia to Europe. From Europe it came to North South America. So it's still spreading through the large corporations like ConAgra and Cargill and Monsanto and Kentucky Fried Chicken, Burger King, McDonald's, and then the IMF and the World Bank and most governmental programs. It just pervades the entire world. The educational system, the religions, for the most part, not all religions actually, but a lot of the main big religions, education, government, corporations, financial institutions. It's all essentially expressions. All of these are expressions of animal agriculture. They're all underlying animal agriculture. Like when we go to Africa to speak, We can see it happening. We can see McDonald's and Burger King are moving in. Now the elephants, the giraffes, the zebras, the hippopotamuses, they're all going extinct. Because before they had habitat. Now we want to cut down the jungles. We want to grow huge quantities of genetically engineered corn and soy and alfalfa to feed these imprisoned animals, the cows and pigs and chickens. And now the elephants are no longer allowed. They're become pests. The lions are pests. The zebras are pests. Now they're shooting them. They're killing them. They're trying to get rid of them. They don't want them. That's what animal agriculture has always been. It's a war against nature. So when we're raised in this society, in our school, in a church, and the doctor, and everybody tells us we need to eat animal foods to be healthy, and it makes money. The thing is, it does make money. The pharmaceutical industry gets wealthy. The big chemical companies get wealthy. The big petroleum companies get wealthy. The big banks get wealthy. The big war machine gets wealthy. This definitely works just great. I mean, it makes a lot of people very rich, but it makes a lot of people very poor and very sick. And most of the people actually are harmed. It's just a tiny elite that loves it, But,
and it only works for the short term, not for the long run.
It only works for the short term. It's not going to work for the long term. And even the people that are getting wealthy, I mean, they're not happy, really. So it really doesn't work for anyone. So again, the good news is that people are beginning to realize this, and that even though we have a system in place that is kind of like squeezing the life out of the earth, there is this new, beautiful, growing movement of awareness, of becoming more conscious, compassionate, kind, respectful of animals, of nature, of our own bodies, of our own wisdom, of the sacred feminine dimension of life, of the children, and actually living it. And this is it. That's why I love veganism. It is a critique of a system that's devastating and obsolete, but it's not just a critique. We have a wonderful alternative. The food is delicious. We can feed everyone on a fraction of the land. That's important to understand. We can feed everyone on a fraction of the water, the land, the petroleum. It's wonderful. I mean, it's all good news. We can be healthier. We can allow the rivers to heal, the oceans to heal, our societies to heal. But the doorway that's beckoning us, the main doorway, is this doorway we call veganism, or a plant-based way of eating and living. A veganism is a diet, right? I mean, we have this word diet. It's a way of eating. But it's really interesting. The old word in Greek that we get our word diet from, the old word was dieta. And dieta actually means a manner of living or a way of life. So it's much deeper.
Actually, more lifestyle. So
lifestyle, right? It's a lifestyle. So it's what we're eating, but it's also how we're living. I think consuming less. Taking time every day to meditate, to connect with our inner silence, to try to make our relationships based on harmony and respect for other human animals, and so forth, is all very important as well.
And I think food is such a powerful way, of course, how we can begin to practice these things and then bring them into other aspects of our life as well, and bring them then into alignment. And I think it's just that's why I've created the series, to make the connection and to find one path and one way on how to begin and then be able to grow from there.
Yes, it's actually, just like you say, there's two steps. One step, I think, is understanding why. That's what I'm talking about now. Why it's important for us to question animal agriculture and to realize that we can thrive on a plant-based way of eating. And the second step is how. So what do we do? How do we actually do it? And the thing is that when the why is strong, then the how, we'll figure it out. So I mainly emphasize the why, but I think how is important as well, and to see that actually it's so great. My wife Madeline is really very skilled at creating delicious vegan food, and I get the benefit from that, but it's actually quite simple. It's not that difficult. There's the number of foods that are available to us, all the different grains and legumes and vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds. I mean, you can make such a much bigger variety of foods We become more aware of the ethnic cuisines, Indonesian food, Indian food, Middle Eastern food. These are all basically Chinese. They're all most of the ethnic cuisines are basically plant-based, essentially. So we can, and now there's plant-based alternatives really for cheese and milk and for eggs and for burgers and all these things. So it's really nowadays it's gotten so much easier. I remember when I first started, it was. Yeah. I know when I first started, I remember it was like we made the very first vegan ice cream at the farm in Tennessee. We invented it, and we would take the soy milk and which we would make ourselves, and we'd cook soybeans, grind them up, squeeze them, get the soy milk, then we'd add thickener and sugar and freeze it, and we called it ice bean. It was terrible, but it was kind of like, we call it vegetarian ice cream, and here it is. We get the first ice cream with but it's come so far. Now they say like 70% of all the vegan ice cream is eaten by non-vegans because it just tastes better than the commercial one. And the same thing is true with so many other foods. The cheeses that are coming out now that are vegan, and the meats and burgers and all these things. They're just so much healthier. They're much lighter, a fraction of the environmental impact, and they taste fantastic. Really. And once our taste buds change, our taste buds change about in our mouth about every 3 weeks. So if we can just go through like a 3-week period of changing our diet, it's after that it's easy.
It becomes easier, yeah. Yeah, wonderful. And I would like to know, what do you think is, if we transition, or how is food really connected, or can be connected to our spiritual growth and expansion as well?
It's very much connected, and I think this is a very important question. That was my reason, and the reason I originally became a vegan, and vegetarian and vegan, it was really because I understood the violence towards animals, but I also could see very clearly, like if you read any spiritual books at all, or even religious books, the fundamental teaching is don't do to others what you wouldn't want to have done to yourself, like the golden rule. Do to others what you would like to have done. Whatever I most want for myself, give that to others. And this basic idea of kindness and respect for others, that is the foundation of any possibility of deepening our spiritual practice. I was so interested in meditation, and when I was throughout my whole 20s, I did all these retreats. I would go on 3-day meditation retreats, 5-day, 7-day, 10-day, 20-day, 40-day, 90-day. I was just sitting, meditating, and I learned to connect more deeply with the source of consciousness that we all have at our core. Eternal, radiant, infinite consciousness. That's our true nature. What we are, it's like what we are is the sky. The sky is infinite. When we look up in the sky, we might see clouds, and we think, oh, it's a cloudy day. The sun's not shining, but the sun is always shining. The sky is always there. That's our true nature. And I realized I was born into a society where the clouds came in early. All these clouds of fear and domination and competition and so forth. And that's the world. That becomes the whole world, is these clouds. But it's through meditation, through quieting the mind and being able to get a glimpse through the clouds that there's this infinite sky. It's our true nature. What we are is eternal. What we are is spirit. When we say spirit, it's infinite, eternal consciousness. We're manifesting through a physical body, but we're not this body. And we're much more than that. And when we understand that, we can begin to see that in others. And then we begin to have a sense of love and respect for them as infinite manifestations of life also. And we can do that for animals as well. They're also, animal agriculture reduces everything to matter. We just sell them by the pound. Pretty soon, we harm them because they're just matter. They're just things. They're just objects. And then pretty soon we see ourselves and each other as objects. We have to manipulate each other in a heartless economic system. We have to sell ourselves on the market. We have to make a good resume. We turn ourselves into an object. We say we think we're going to die and that's the end. This is all anti-spiritual, and it's all based on animal agriculture. Animal agriculture is anti-spiritual. Animal agriculture destroys the roots of spirituality. We really have to understand this very clearly. Animal agriculture is actually demonic. in its core. It harms everything. It creates ugliness of everything. It destroys everything. Animal agriculture will destroy everything because it's based on the lie of domination and exploitation, of using other beings for our own ends. That's completely contrary to our own inner wisdom, to the love and truth and awareness that are our true nature. So in order to have any kind of authentic spiritual life, we have to question animal agriculture. Any spiritual teacher who is not questioning animal agriculture is not a spiritual teacher. They're not. They cannot be, in this day and age, consider themselves to be a spiritual teacher if they're not actively promoting compassion for animals and for all life, and that means vegan living. Actively promoting vegan living, because this is the foundation of the truth that we are, is of the interconnectedness of all life, and that we're not just objects to be manipulated and used by each other. And as long as we understand that and make an effort to understand that ourselves, we're living a spiritual life. We don't have to belong to any religion just to live a spiritual life. But what I've discovered, for example, is like the Buddhist tradition, for example, especially in China, Korea, it's really based actually on, this isn't, so when we go to China, it's so great. They actually set up lectures for me, the Chinese Buddhist monasteries, to speak to the public, because they're trying to get the whole, country to go vegan. They want people to go vegan. And I think it's so refreshing to see when the main religion in a society is actually also promoting spirituality and promoting veganism. And we should see this more and more. We should see Christianity and Judaism and Islam and all the religions promoting veganism. If they're not, then they're not authentic religions. They're not promoting veganism. They're just promoting their culture. But what good is that? We have to promote some spirituality also if we consider ourselves an authentic religion.
Wow. Yeah. And I think it's I think some people really struggle with the word vegan or veganism, and I always see it as a label. It's just like a concept, a construct, and it's really important to look behind what are the teachings behind it. And I think you have put it so beautifully in the word.
Yeah, I think it's very important to not get stuck on the word, because you're right. The problem with animal agriculture is we create categories in our mind. We say, okay, this is my dog, I love my dog. This is a cow, I kill the cow. And we create these categories, and then we create another category. I'm a vegan, you're not a vegan. I'm good, you're not good, or I'm not good. So in a way, I don't like the word vegan because it creates categories. I'd rather not even use it. But it is useful in the sense of just talking about a way of living that's different than violent abuse of animals. So we can call it ahimsa. We can call it I wrote the World Peace Diet because I think that's another way, a world peace way of living, right? A way of living to promote world peace, for example. That's another way of looking at it. So we shouldn't get hung up on these categories and words, right? That's a good point.
True. Yeah. So true. And it's so much easier when you go into a restaurant, you say, I would like a vegan dish than a dish that doesn't have a dairy.
Yeah, right. Right. And they know what you mean now, which is
they know what you mean, right?
Right.
Yes. So how are people able to connect with you more deeply? If they would like to know more about you, would like to read your books, where can they find you or work with you even?
I think the easiest thing probably is our website, which is worldpeacediet.com. It's also connected to just my name, willtuttle.com, and that'll kind of get you there. We have Facebook and Twitter and presence also. And we do have the World Peace Diet training program, which is available at worldpeacediet.com, or worldpeacemastery.com is also, if people want to just go deeper into the ideas in the World Peace Diet. That's probably the easiest way. And we also have there our tour schedule. We do a lot of traveling and give lectures all over the United States and worldwide. And we have a link there also to our YouTube channel. So we have quite a few of lectures and interviews and presentations, as well as my wife Madeline's intuitive cooking. Lots of that's the how. She has lots of videos on how to make stovetop lasagna and oat milk and all that stuff. Right. Yeah. So we need both. Right. So we have a lot there of to help people understand more about all this. Yeah.
Wonderful. And you actually have a gift that you are sharing with the audience, right?
Right. Yeah. I thought if anyone's interested, you can go to the link. It's World Peace Meditations, which is a CD that I created. It's in eight different meditations, and each one of them is designed to help deepen our connection with a different aspect of the truth that we are. One is on joy and gratitude, one is on our animal relations, one is on radiant health, one is on earth healing. There's 8 different ones, and and they all have my voice leading through, along with original piano music that I composed, and Madeline playing silver flute in the background. So it's music and meditation, and they're really great, people have found, because you can either do it as a meditation with your eyes closed, going deep with it, or you can just have it playing like while you're driving your car. I mean, it's something you can do actually while you're doing something else. It's a way of cleansing, I think, our mind, and also affirming the deeper truths that we have. So if you click on that link, then you can download. It's an MP3 download, and it's free, so you can listen to it. And we've had a lot of people say it's really helped them a lot over the years.
Wonderful. That sounds amazing. And so I would like to come to our last question. And because you are working in the field of positive change, my question is, what is your personal message of hope to the audience?
My message of hope to the audience essentially is to remember that every morning when we wake up, we have another day. And I think that basic awareness, we have another day that we can be grateful for, another opportunity to learn and to grow and to contribute in some way, to be part of the solution to the problems rather than being part of the problem. That every day we have another day, and we never know when we're going to leave this earth, but we do know that we will. That's guaranteed. So to live our lives while we're here, day by day, doing the best that we can, to be a light of kindness and to spread the truth of the interconnectedness of all life. I think this is, in a sense, beyond being hopeful or being hopeless. It's just beyond both of that dualism, to just do our best, knowing that what we are is eternal consciousness, and that essentially our purpose is to love and to bring love to the world.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilzel. It was such a pleasure to have you. And thank you all for watching and joining us today. And please, please, please stay tuned on more incredible content on how to eat to improve your health, empower your spirit, and thrive with the planet. See you soon.
Thank you.